Good evening, everyone. It is a delight to welcome you tonight to the 6th annual Adoniram Judson Memorial, Gordon Memorial Speech Competition, otherwise known as the JUD Talks. Welcome. I'm Christy Gardner, and it's my pleasure to chair the Department of Communication Arts, Theater, and Art, and it's the Communication Arts program that is sponsoring this event tonight. Now, our namesake of this competition, A.J. Gordon, as you probably know, was a pastor, he was an educator, he knew the power of words to persuade, to communicate, and that's what we're going to be hearing tonight from our competition, our finalists tonight. In Communication Arts at Gordon College, we talk a lot about worshiping a God who speaks. In the Genesis creation account, we read that God spoke the worlds into being. And it's that God that we worship when we use our words to communicate. Whether it's to create space for others to use their words, to shine a spotlight on important needs in our society and culture, or to build each other up as opposed to tearing them down with our words. And is that God who we're worshiping tonight, the one who models for us how to use the power of our words. Now, there are a few people that we need to thank tonight, and one person who was instrumental in making this event happen. Please join me in thanking our fine arts manager, Rachel Bovey. And the other two people that we need to thank are standing right here next to me. I'm going to introduce one of them who will be introducing the other, and that is my colleague in Communication Arts and the director of this year's JUD Talks, Dr. Rachel Yu.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rachel Yu, an assistant professor in Communication Arts here at Gordon. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2024 JUD Talks. Tonight, we are going to showcase 5 finalists who have distinguished themselves through their remarkable insights and communicative skills. I'd like to extend my gratitude to all who auditioned in February. This year, actually, we had such a strong group of speakers that making the selection of our finalists was both challenging and rewarding. So I'd like to encourage you to listen intently and with open minds to the presentations. The dedications and efforts behind each talk are commendable. And I have no doubt that we all will benefit from the experience. Okay, now let the talks begin. But right after, one more remark from Dr. Underation.
One of the things that TED Talks are about, and they always say it, ideas worth sharing. Tonight, you're getting JUD Talks, ideas worth sharing. So I hope as you listen to the speeches and take in the ideas that you reflect on what that might mean for you, because that's a large part of what speech is all about. Hearing what is said, understanding it, and applying it for yourself. All right, are we ready? Are we ready to get started? Yeah, we are. Let's begin by introducing tonight's MCs, Chrisana Spear, Michelle Bayarjagal. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chrisana Spear.
And my name is Michelle.
And welcome to 2024 JUD Talks. As I said, my name is Chrisana. I'm a junior here from Dallas, and I am your JUD Talk 2023 winner with my speech, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, a shift from body positivity to body neutrality. And then, oh yeah, that would help.
Hi. Yep, and yes, I'm a senior. Last year, I was the second place winner of the JUD Talks with my talk, Cars Are Not Good, in parentheses, for cities.
So I want to open with this quote from Leonard Nimoy, also known as Spock. The miracle is this: the more we share, the more we have. And I really believe that's the heart behind tonight's competition. I think it's less of a competition and more of a night where we get to share ideas that are important to the speakers, important to the Gordon culture, and important to the world as a whole. So what are JUD Talks? As Dr. Gardner mentioned, they are our annual speech-based competition. We hold this annually, and it's a time for students to gather and share presentations that they've spent hours on and share in front of you and be judged by judges. And tonight is just as much about you as it is about the speakers. We invite you to participate in critically thinking about what you're hearing, not just letting it go in one ear and out the other. So now we're going to introduce the judges. I'll go first. Okay.
So first we have Noelle Graves, who is the award-winning journalist with awards from the New England Press Association and the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication. She has experience in the newspaper, radio, and television industries in the Boston area, and she's a senior lecturer at BU in the Department of Journalism. Oh, yes, actually, would the judges like to stand up and just wave to the crowd, let themselves be known? There we go.
Next is one of my favorite people here on campus, Jessica Allgard. She is, I could probably do this without my notes, but I'm not gonna. She's the technical director and production manager in the Gordon College Theater program. She has designed some fantastic sets for shows including The Tempest, The Fantastics, and Little Women. She has most recently directed Hitler's Tasters in last year's Fringe Festival. So give it up for Jess.
And our third judge for the evening, Sydney Cooney, who is the content marketing writer for Gordon College's marketing and communications team. She brings to light the stories of student success and the compelling achievements of Gordon's community, staff, and faculty. And she has written marketing material for brands like BCBG, the Hawaiians, and Mikato Safaris.
So there's a couple things that are going to happen tonight. The first thing is you're going to hear five wonderful speeches, and you're going to hear some really fascinating points. Some you may agree with, some you may disagree with. We invite you to wrestle with that as they are speaking.
Yep. Now, while there are three, I suppose, placed finishers for tonight who will be ranked first, second, and third place by the judges, by the criteria we're about to go over in just a moment. On top of that, there was another award provided to the audience choice winner. So after all the speeches have been delivered, we're going to invite the audience to scan a QR code and vote for which speech they believe deserves the audience choice award.
And then while the judges are deliberating, figuring out which speeches are going to come in third, second, and first place, we're going to invite our speakers to come back up. They thought they were done. They're not going to be. And it's going to be y'all's opportunity to ask questions. So keep track of any questions that you have when people are speaking. And you'll get an opportunity. Michelle and I will be running around the audience with the microphones. And it'll be your opportunity to address the speakers directly.
Yeah. And then after that, the winners will be revealed, the Audience Choice Award will be awarded, and after some photos and a cute time celebrating together, we invite you all to our reception, which will take place just outside, where we will probably have cookies. Bon appetit.
There will be cookies.
Yes.
There will be cookies. So before we begin, one, please silence your cell phones. I don't think any of us have taken our ringer off silent since 2012, but just make sure that it is. I know our generation very well. And I just want to let y'all know what the judges will be judging on. So there's actually like a rubric that these speeches are going to be evaluated for. Not trying to scare y'all, but for things like stage presence, content, and stuff like that. So it's not a nepotism, it's not favoritism. The speeches that are presented tonight are all truly astounding, and the judges have a hard decision ahead of them, but it is a decision based on a full rubric.
And these speeches have been crafted and worked over for a period of a couple months now. Auditions took place at the very, very end of February this semester, which means that these, our speakers today have been thinking at least about their topics for probably a lot longer than that. And they've been assigned coaches, either Underation or Rachel, have met with our speakers. They have honed their speeches, they have worked on, crafted. They probably had to remove a bunch of content that they really wanted to get into but couldn't for the sake of time, right? This is a very thoughtful process, and so please really just enjoy, I guess, the finished product. These are our finalists. These are people who have worked on this for quite a while, and they're very happy and proud to present to you today.
Can you tell we've done this a time or two before? Anyways, without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Jason Asonye. He is a computer science major, a junior, and he's from Monmouth Junction, New Jersey, with his speech, Use Discernment When Listening to Music. His speech is encouraging listeners to take a second look at the songs they listen to by breaking down how music affects us individually and as a whole. Please welcome up Jason.
All right. So, before we all begin, I want us to put our thinking caps on, because my speech is going to require us to really think hard and deep about some of the music that we listen to. So, get your hands out. Hands out, everyone. On three, we put our thinking caps on. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So now, we're ready. All right. What if the music that we listen to became a mirror which reflected our personality to the people around us? Would that mirror accurately reflect you? So now, I want you guys to think about that question. Just imagine some Jeopardy music playing on in the background as you think. Don't look at me. Think. Actually think. All right. So now, I want you to raise your hand if that mirror would accurately reflect you. Okay, I see some hands up. Keep that in mind. Now, I want you to raise your hand if you think the purpose of my speech is to influence you to only listen to Christian music. See some hands up. I see why you might be thinking that. But, fortunately, you're wrong. Since you're wrong, let's get some things straight. So first of all, I'm not going to be persuading you to only listen to Christian music. I'm also not going to be persuading you to not listen to secular or non-religious music. As we go through this talk, I want you to think about the music that you listen to on a daily basis and some of the ways that it might impact you. Secondly, we're going to be taking a lyrical approach to the songs that we're going to be talking about. So we're not going to be counting classical music or instrumentals. It's going to be music that has lyrics in it. And finally, I want us to put our biases to the side. When you're thinking about some of the songs that you listen to, don't think about the fact that it's from your favorite artist or that it's from your favorite genre. Let's approach this topic from an objective point of view. So now, we're all on the same page? All right, so let's jump into it. So, in 2023, there was a musical experience study done where the purpose of the study was to examine the emotional impact of music using something called a positive and negative effect schedule. So the participants were 71 university students from the ages of 20 to 40. And basically what would happen is that they'll play them some type of music, they'll give them a self-survey, which is what this positive and negative effect schedule is. And then on one side, they'll have 10 emotions with a positive connotation. On the other side, 10 emotions with a negative connotation and a rating from 1 to 5. So after they play them the song, they're going to rate the levels of emotions that they felt. So that's what they use to determine how it affected them emotionally, all right? So Overall, in this study, they found that music across different genres, across pop, hip-hop, even metal, delivered high levels of emotion, of positive emotions. So what are those emotions? Emotions like happiness, joy, calmness, excitement. All of the genres that they listened to, they felt that. And one thing to note is that even when they played sad music or music that had sad lyrics to them, it still showed that the participants experienced positive emotions such as empathy. Now, the next case study that they did was to play happy music and to play sad music back to back and have them do the same study. So when they played them happy music, in this case, Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, they showed that even though it increased positive emotions, it had no effect on the negative emotions that they were already feeling. And when they played the sad music, in this case, Everybody Hurts by Rem, they said that it reduced both positive and negative emotions. So think it reduced happiness, but it also reduced hostility and nervousness. So why am I telling you these facts? I'm telling it to you to show you that music is such a nuanced topic. It affects us in many different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of deal. When we listen to music or the songs that we listen to, we come in with all types of backgrounds, all types of experiences. But the thing that I found that this study, as well as others, doesn't address is the way that music impacts our spiritual lives. So today, I'd like to ask you guys, how does the music you listen to affect your spiritual life? I'm not waiting for you to answer. I'm just giving dramatic silence, you know? So, for this, let's look at Proverbs 4, verse 23. And it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Now, is the Bible talking about our actual physical hearts? It's not, because that's what keeps our hearts beating. It's talking about our spiritual hearts. And what are our spiritual hearts? It's our soul. So if we look at it again, we're replacing heart for soul. It says, above all else, guard your soul, for everything you do flows from it. And when you think about the term guard, it's not a passive term. It's an active one. Think back to basketball or football. I know we just came out of March Madness. When you see the defense guarding the offense, you see them just standing around. They're actively moving. Sometimes they stood around, personally, but they're actively moving, making sure the person in front of them doesn't get behind them. So that's the same way that the Bible tells us to guard our hearts. So now, I had to figure out a way to incorporate my computer science background since I'm in the comm art space. So over here, we have an input-output table, which seems pretty self-explanatory. You have your input, your process, your output, and then your feedback to show you what you put in your input. But now, I want us to give us a little exercise to think about. So let's imagine we're making a cake. In our input, what are we going to need for that cake? We need ingredients, right? So those ingredients are going to be things like eggs, flour, sugar, things like that, all right? Now, what's the process going to be? The process is going to be us actually mixing everything together, putting it in the oven, and waiting for the cake to finish. And finally, our output is going to be the finished cake. That's a good cake, right? It looks pretty yummy. So let's say we go and taste that cake, and we say, this is some good cake. But I don't taste any eggs or sugar in it. So it must be the case that I didn't put those things in. We can't say that because we obviously know what we put into that cake, right? So why don't we take this same logical approach with the lyrics and the music that we listen to? Instead of ingredients, think about the lyrics and the songs and the messages that you hear when you're listening to music. Instead of the process, think about the way that it affects your soul. And the output is going to be our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors that come from said music. So before I continue, I need us to stop thinking about cake. I know, I put it up there, but let's get back on track. So now we're going to look at the unconscious mind. So as we know, we have the conscious mind, which is things that we are aware of, and the unconscious mind, which is things that might go under the radar. And according to cognitive neuroscientists, they say that out of all of the information that the brain processes, 95% of that information is processed by the unconscious mind. Now, why does that matter? The conscious mind is responsible for things such as decision-making and critical thinking, but the unconscious mind is responsible for things such as your beliefs, your emotions, your habits. So if 95% of the information that we receive from the brain is processed by the unconscious mind, it makes sense why the Bible says we should guard our hearts, right? Because there's a lot of things that can go in that we don't realize are going in. And Dr. Judith E. Pearson, she did a research called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. When she dove into this, she says the unconscious mind is mostly visible through its influence on our feelings, our behaviors, and our thoughts. So, now, I've told you why we should discern what we listen to, but how do we actually do that? For this, I want to first explain what discernment means. So the definition of discernment is to judge well, all right? And I feel like some of us believe that the music that we listen to doesn't really impact us. But according to the Bible in the example that we just did, I hope you guys can see that it does. But what happens when we put that discernment away to the side? We listen to music that might have bad lyrics or things like that, and it's going into us, but just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. So that's why it's important to have discernment with the things that we listen to. So with that out of the way, how do we actually discern? And I want us to ask ourselves 3 questions. The first question, what message does the music portray? I want us to go think about your favorite songs, go on Google, search up the lyrics and read it top to bottom, but don't play the music. Because in my personal experience, I found that when I've actually read the lyrics, not being distracted by the beat or the production, there was a lot of things that it was saying that I wasn't even aware of. And it was things that I didn't agree with. But because it sounded so good, I didn't realize that. So I want us to do that. The second question we should ask ourselves is, what are our values? Who do we aspire to be as people? What are the values that we hold near and dear to our hearts? And I want us to compare that with the music that we listen to on a daily basis and see if those things align. Finally, I want us to ask ourselves, how are our thoughts? Based on the music that we listen to, what do we find ourselves thinking about most of the time? Is it thoughts that are going to encourage us to do good or encourage us to go out and be great? Or are they thoughts that hinder us from doing that? So I believe that if we ask ourselves these 3 questions, we can really begin to discern what we listen to. Now, as we close, I want you to think back to that answer that you gave when I asked you if the music that you listened to reflected your or not. Now I want you to look at the person to your left. Now look at the person to your right. I know it's a little confusing over here. They may not be able to see your personality based on the music that you listen to, but I hope we can all agree that it does reflect the essence of who we are. And since it does, let's make sure our musical reflections are as vibrant and as authentic as the lives we aspire to live. Thank you.
Next up, we have Sarah McDonald, who is a senior in communication arts, delivering the speech, Owning the Story of Your Body. An excerpt. Our bodies are constantly changing, from the awkwardness of puberty to pandemics and college lifestyle shifts. Together, we're going to look at 3 practical strategies to help find joy in our bodies changing throughout our lives. Please welcome Sarah.
Do you remember puberty? Do you remember that awkward phase of life where pimples started popping up all around your face and seemingly overnight you needed to start using extra strength deodorant? Well, what if I told you that puberty wasn't the last time your body would start changing? What if I told you that, in fact, your body would change for the rest of your life? For a lot of us college students, this is a reality that we already see. A university observational study found that on average, college students between their first year and final year can experience a weight change of up to 10 pounds. And a New York Times survey conducted with college students and young adults also found that when young adults compare their body to others online, they found higher rates of eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and lower self-esteem. Now, lower self-esteem is important in the workplace because another study found that lower self-esteem, in fact, lowers productivity, correlates with decreased job performance, and impedes ambition and risk-taking. Now, for a bunch of us college seniors who might be in the room, we know that we need all the help that we can get going into the workforce. The reality is that our bodies changing are inevitable and unpredictable. It goes beyond just the college years. Things like changing jobs to be from an active lifestyle to a little bit more sedentary, having a baby or kids, global pandemics that change our access to exercise. These are all factors that can affect our bodies. And while these are unpredictable and inevitable, they are not defining of us. So today we're going to take a look at the research of Dr. Nicole Schnackenberg, who's an educational and community psychologist, into a few strategies that she developed for how we can re-own the story that our bodies are telling us. So we're going to take a look at a couple approaches: emotionally, owning the story of our thoughts; physically, owning the story of ourselves; and spiritually, owning our redemption. So I'm going to jump in first with her first strategy, owning the story of our thoughts, a practice of self-compassion and mindfulness. Well, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is taking the time that when you experience adverse emotions, identifying those feelings, naming them, and then allowing them to hold space and let them go, acknowledging that though negative feelings that we experience are valid, they are temporary and not a part of our external reality. So with mindfulness, we move on to the next set of strategies, owning the self. She gives a couple ideas of how we can reframe some perspectives that may impact how our bodies change to be from restriction to celebration. So the first one is fueling. This is changing the mindset of how we view food to not be something with moral ground of good and bad, but rather viewing food as nourishment and the tools for which our bodies can do wonderful things. The next is taking a look at movement. Looking at exercise as not a form of self-punishment, but rather a way to celebrate what our bodies are capable of. If you like to swim, swim. If you like to cycle, cycle. If you like to run, run, but let that not be a reason you're punishing your body, but a reason that you're celebrating what it can do. The next strategy that she has, I actually want all of us to participate with together. So you're all seated, so you can do this quite well. I'm going to go pop a squat in a second here to join you with that. But the third strategy is how we can re-own breathing. So some of you may have heard of this concept of 4x4 or box breathing. This is an opportunity that we can allow ourselves that when we have negative emotions to hold space and practice mindfulness. So I'm going to set the scene for you really quick. Imagine you're at the mall going to buy new jeans. Oof, hard experience, not my favorite. So you're at the mall, you're buying new jeans, you pick the first one off the shelf. It was the one that you wore last time you went to buy jeans. It should work, it should fit. So you go into the dressing room, you try them on, and oh, good Lord, they do not fit, not even close, it ain't happening. So in this moment, you have a choice. You have a choice to panic and spiral, wondering, oh my goodness, how have I changed? What has happened to me? I must have let myself go, to practicing a moment of self-compassion. So bear with me here, we're back in the dressing room. You could practice this too. You can take a seat, ground yourself for a moment, and be present. And you can practice 4x4 breathing. So we're going to practice this together. You're already seated, so you can do this with me. We're going to breathe in for 4 heartbeats. Hold for 4 heartbeats, and exhale through our mouths for 4 heartbeats. So as we're breathing in, we're going to breathe in, holding space and identifying those negative emotions. We're going to let them exist, and we're going to breathe them out, acknowledging that they are temporary. So we're in the dressing room. We breathe in. This is temporary. We breathe in, join me. Hold. Maybe you had some negative emotions you had to let go there. I want to go just a step farther from Dr. Nicole's research. I want to apply a biblical lens to her work here. Romans 8:22 through 23 talks about how through the gospel mission, not only are our souls redeemed, but our bodies are part of this redemptive process. that our bodies are part of the testimony before us. I think it's worth noting that when Christ resurrected from the dead, he kept his scars. That these symbols that could have indicated the most traumatizing moment of his life, he kept as a part of the proof of what he overcame and the joy set before him. I want you to know that we can apply that same principle to ourselves, and that us too, the scars that we bear and our seemingly imperfections are part of our gospel story and how we relate uniquely to others around us. I have a word cloud up here collected from information from the Department of Health and Human Services that describes some of the emotions individuals with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and low body image experience. You might not be with me just yet on our 3 strategies that we have here today. You might be saying to yourself, I'm just not getting it, Sarah. This just isn't me. I'm just not experiencing this yet or at all. Well, a meta-analysis found that on average, 1 in 3 individuals will experience negative body image at some point in their lifetimes. That means 1 out of you 3, 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 1 out of you 3. If it's not you, it's your mother, it's your sister, it's our firefighters, it's our professors, it's our teachers, it's our pastors. If it's not you, it's somebody else. So I want us to take a moment to look at our 3 strategies as an act of prevention, as a way of taking a moment to not let these become defining for us. Because though our bodies change, they are not defining. If you want a baby step that you can leave here today, I want you to do a quick check-in with yourself. I want you to check in with yourself and really ask yourself, how are you actually doing? Are you actually okay? Because you deserve to be okay, and you are so much more than your body. You are loved. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Abby Durkin. She is a senior from Littleton, Colorado, with her speech, Give Chapel Another Chance. In the face of a community culture that dismisses chapel as pointless and a waste of time, chapel remains a valuable opportunity to resist the snares of consumerism that lurks in the background of our church culture. Please welcome Abby.
When I say the word chapel, I can imagine what thoughts might be running through your head. You might be thinking about the glorious chapel steeple, or the pews in the chapel sanctuary, or maybe an impactful sermon you've heard in chapel recently. But I can also guess that for the students in the room, you might actually be thinking about how many chapel credits you still have to get before the approaching end of the semester. Or you might be thinking about frustrations that you have about mandatory chapel requirements. Well, for these authors of these misconnection posts, thankfully, what they think about chapel, no one has to guess. This first person writes, stop making chapel longer just to fill the time. Someone else writes, chapel, try not to butcher scripture challenge. Difficulty, impossible. And my personal favorite, who let Corey North back into chapel? And while this is the highlight reel of complaints about chapel, it does represent a more pervasive attitude that our community has towards chapel, where we assume that it is a waste of time. And I know this because I myself used to think of chapel in this way. My first few years at Gordon, I was on a mission. My goal was to get through my 30 credits as quickly as I could so that I could earn back my Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. So I would walk in, I would sit in the back section and pull out either my phone or my computer, and I would text my friends or try and work on homework assignments. and I would wait and wait and wait for the service to be done so that I could finally leave, tap my card, and grab my hard-earned chapel credits. And this environment, this attitude that we have about chapel actually isn't even isolated to our community. There are dozens of schools across the country that require chapel, and they range from optional chapel to mandatory partial attendance to mandatory daily attendance. And a quick Google search will bring up dozens of school articles where students outline all of the reasons that mandatory chapel takes away from the spiritual experience of the students because they are required to go to something that they don't want to go to. The overwhelming idea for these students is that chapel, because it is mandated, is not helpful because it creates a stigma against it and the students don't want to go. And that's fair. That makes sense. It's human nature for us to resist the things that are required of us. But my perspective shift on chapel did not come from them taking away my mandatory chapel credit. Instead, what happened was my friends and I decided that we would invest in the 45 minutes that we were in chapel. We started sitting in the front row. We started putting away our computers and our phones. We started actively engaging in authentic worship and listening to what the speakers had to say with an open mind. And slowly but surely, my perspective started to shift. I started to think about the ways that chapel is not just what I can get out of it. It became less about the credits that I needed to get and more about the beautiful way that I was able to engage in communal worship. And the way that the credits actually built into my schedule opportunities for communal worship. And so here's what I've realized upon further reflection. What we did in choosing to engage in worship was a simple but radical act against consumerism. Consumerism, as we know, is this idea that if we do not have everything, be everything, gain everything, and buy everything, our lives will become small and meaningless. Consumerism takes conversations about happiness and meaningfulness and it turns them into conversations about materialism and individuality for profit. Consumerism takes over every part of our lives. It impacts the way we think about ourselves, our relationships, our jobs, and even our religion. Consumerism in the church specifically teaches us that the church is supposed to provide us a service that leaves us feeling happy and satisfied and better about our relationship with God. Consumerism takes our needs and puts them at the center of God's universe and says, God, your role is to fulfill my needs. So this is what consumerism looks like now. Consumerism looks like when I go into a church and I evaluate the service based on whether or not I liked the worship, or whether or not I felt connected to the sermon, or the way that I felt satisfied leaving the service. Consumerism teaches us that we have to have our needs met. And it impacts the way that we have it and the way that it impacts the way that we look at chapel as well. It is especially prevalent in chapel because, as you know, chapel brings together dozens of different denominations and the backgrounds of thousands of students. So what this means is that if we were to look at chapel as something that we need to get something out of, inevitably we will be let down more than once because it is impossible for chapel to fulfill the backgrounds and to represent every denomination, every single chapel service. Now, what I'm not arguing is that there isn't still work to be done in the chapel office. There are still dozens of denominations and many faith backgrounds that are not properly represented in chapel. And this can lead students to feel like there's never an opportunity for them to worship in a way that is most comfortable for them in chapel. What I am arguing, though, is that no amount of work that the chapel office does is going to change this perspective on chapel if the people who are in chapel are not ready and willing to receive the work that is being done. As long as we continue to see chapel as a transactional item, as something that we either get spiritual things out of or just get our credit out of, then we are doomed to keep chapel as the source of our needs and a place to get our needs met, and we miss the opportunity to worship a God who deserves to be worshiped. So, of course, I still have moments where I wish that I had gotten more out of chapel. There are still days where I wish that the sermon had been more interesting or the worship had been a little bit different, but what I know now is that even on those days, it is still worth my time and my investment to go to chapel because of the choice that I am making to resist consumerism when it comes to my faith. And it puts God back at the center of my worship and says, God, you are worthy of worship beyond what I get out of it. So my goal is not to radically change your idea on all of chapel. What I do want to do is expose you to the way that the shadows of consumerism are taking over in the corners. They come into the chapel in the ways that we least expect it. And here's what I want us to do. I want us to take the time and to make a small move. The small move is to each day, today, tomorrow, and the next, to wake up and to say, Lord, you are worthy of worship beyond what I get out of it. This is a small attitude shift that can have a big effect because our community can come together and realize that we are here to glorify God and that is the primary reason that we gather. And that the Lord is big enough to see that our needs will be met and to still be the big God of the universe. So we're going to take that first step together right now. If you will, I would like for you to hold out your hands as a symbol to your mind and your body and your soul that you have very little to offer God, and yet this is all that God wants. That you have an opportunity to offer yourself to God, and God will take it, He will take care of it, and He will take care of you. And so I will end with this benediction from the Book of Common Courage that I would like you to receive. Jesus, you who blessed faith as small as a seed, reveal the mystery of faith's abundance in meekness, not might. That in ourselves and those we meet, we too would bless the bravery of starting off small. Amen. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Yein Lee. Yein is a freshman hailing from South Korea with a major in international affairs, and her speech is called Living as a Stranger, the Possibility of Changes. My speech questions the audience about what home is actually like. Is home what you believe and imagine? Where are you from? And where is your home? Please invite Yein.
I would love to get to know a little bit about audience before I start. How many of you here are from Massachusetts? A lot. Then how many of you here are from the United States but not Massachusetts? Or more. Then how many of you here are from other countries? Very few. Last, but for every one of you, how many of you here consider Gordon College as your home? That's what I'm going to talk about today, living as a stranger. I would love to begin with a small activity. Please join me. Take a deep breath and close your eyes and think about this question. What is home? Just imagine your home and take a deep breath. For some of you, home can be a country like the United States or China or Korea. For some of you, a home can be a more specific place like Massachusetts, New Hampshire. For some of you, home can be a physical house. Or for some of you, home can be people, your family, friends, and people you love. But as for me, my home is a unique one, and I would love to share my home today. But before that, I would love to talk a little bit about myself. So, I was born in South Korea in 2005. My parents are Koreans. My passport says I am a Korean. and my government thinks that I am a Korean citizen. But what is so funny is that I never considered myself as a full Korean because I lived there for only 3 months. When I was 3 months old, my parents and we moved to China, and we lived there for 14 years. During that 14 years, I had good times and bad times. I love the people there, I love the culture, and I love every memory. But I would say I had more bad times than good times. Even though Koreans, Chinese look very similar by outer appearance, we have dark hair, brown skin, pretty small body structure, and even though I fully immerse in their culture and language, I still remain as a stranger to those Chinese people. During that 14 years, I had a toughest moment of my life, and it impacted me greatly about how I think about China. When I was 5 years old, my church was having a 3-day retreat when the Chinese police came and took the pastor and my father. And after a few days, they were kicked out of China, and I, mom, and my sister, we lived without our dad for 10 years. During that 10 years, I had a lot of tough moments. I was enduring being bullied at school by Chinese students while watching my sister doesn't even remember or know the existence of father because she was too young. I was enduring hard moments when my mom was crying day and night. And this is the last photo that I took before my dad left. If anyone is going to ask me today that if China is my home because I spent most of my lifetime there, I would say no. Home is a place with safety and comfort. But I never felt like that in China. When I was 14, a new chapter began in my life and in our family life. My parents decided to become full-time missionaries, so we moved to the Philippines, and I went to a small Korean homeschool. I was very excited at first. They are all Koreans. I am a Korean. Finally, I came to a place where I can call home. But it wasn't that easy. I couldn't understand Korean culture and the Koreans very well because I lived in China way too long that I acted like a Chinese, behaved like a Chinese, and they thought me as a Chinese. I was thinking that this is so weird. I'm a Korean, they're Koreans, but why can't I even get along well with the Korean people? Eventually, I realized what was wrong, but still I felt like I am a stranger. Last August, I came to this big country, the United States. I was excited, but more of nervous and worried because I've never been to the United States before. I didn't know any single American, and I was worried that what if I remain as a stranger again here? But Gordon was better than I thought. Gordon, people were really nice, thank you. And I really enjoy my life here. And I was very happy thinking that, maybe Gordon College is a place where I can call home. I was very excited, being very honest with you. But soon enough, I realized that I was wrong again. I came here for only 6 months. My English is not perfect. I still had some hard time understanding why Americans act like that, and they also have questions to me why I behave in a certain way. So I didn't know the American culture very well to call America my home. Then I got so frustrated. I began to question why I can't belong to anywhere. Where do I belong to? Everyone seems to belong to somewhere and have a place called home. But is home really what I believe, what you believe, what everyone believes? I was thinking about these questions day and night. According to the dictionary, home is the place where one lives permanently, especially as a member of family or household. So I thought about my life. I was born in Korea, but I never lived there, so I can't consider Korea my home. So does the US. China, I spent most of my lifetime there, but I wasn't feeling home. Philippines, I never had any interaction with the Filipinos because I stayed only with Koreans in the small school. And I even had a hard time, struggling time, understanding how to be like a Korean when I'm a Korean. I was so annoyed by the fact that I am being like this and with my circumstance. I've been praying days and nights, asking God, what is home, God? And one day, God just gave me this one answer out of nowhere. Yein, home is not something that you can define only with ethnicity, race, or a place or a location. Home is where your heart is, where my heart is. I have been thinking, where's my heart? If that is my home, where's my heart? It was always here with me, but I never felt home. And then God was telling me again that, Yein, why do you think home is one single solid thing? Home is a combination of everything. Out of my home, a little part of my home is the places where I lived before. A little part of my home is the people who influenced me, my parents, my family, friends, everyone that I love. And then another part of my home is the special experience that I had. And the most important of all, the center of my home was God. When everything was changing around me, I was changing, time was changing, the places where I live was changing, one thing that never changed and remained the same was God. And that was the center of my home. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge, my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Let me ask you this question once again. What is home? No. What is your home? Everyone can have different, unique home with different combinations, with different center, and it doesn't matter. I have been living as a stranger for years and years, and I finally found my home. And I don't seek home anymore because I'm at home. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Henry Lonstein. He is a junior from Boylston, Mass. With his speech, "Men have died and complacency killed them." This speech uncovers the silent threat of complacency that grips modern masculinity. How do we better accept our call as men in a society that strays so far away from raising up biblical men of God? Please welcome Henry.
My mom's watching online, so I just wanted to wave to her, let her know, you know what I mean? I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, you guys might have heard that one before. I mean, you should be familiar with it. They're the opening lines to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech that he gave on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I was a little crunched on time when I was originally writing this speech. And so I did what any other college-age student entering a public speaking competition would do. I Googled greatest speech of all time. And so when this one came up, I figured, well, I should just do that. But upon further analysis of the speech, I kind of came to the conclusion that if I tried to emulate what Dr. King did on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, it would make little to no sense at all. Now, don't get me wrong, Dr. King was a magician with his words, and he was a technician of delivering them. But I don't really think that those are the ingredients that made his speech so important. It wasn't necessarily the contents that were so impactful, but rather the context into which they were spoken. Dr. King spoke at a time of great oppression in America, where black men and black women had to persevere through severe racial injustice. He noticed a problem that was happening and chose to take a stand. He did not wait. He did not pause. He did not say, oh, I'll just wait until things get really bad to take a stand. He just spoke. And I think that's exactly the opposite of where we stand as a society when it comes to raising up biblical men of God. We no longer have men who are willing to take a stand, so that when things do go wrong and problems do occur, we sit and we wait, drowning in this ocean of complacency, tangled up in these vines of our own selfish desires, choked by worldly things. Instead, we wait until things get really bad to do something about it. Now, conveniently for you, I came up with a name for this phenomenon. And when I tell you that I came up with it, I mean I Googled it too. It's called the region beta paradox. Now, those are big words for me, so let me see if I can explain them. Imagine if you were to travel to the store and go a mile or less. You might walk it. Now imagine if you were to travel 2 miles or more. You would almost certainly drive it. So paradoxically, you would go 2 miles quicker than you would go 1 mile. Now what this means is that sometimes worse situations can be better than better situations. Are you following? Let me give another example. Imagine you have a friend who works an office job, your typical standard 9 to 5. The pay is decent, it's not good, not great. They have an okay relationship with their boss. The benefits are fine. This person would actually be better off if their situation was worse, because it would galvanize them into action, into quitting their job and finding a better one. Now, this only becomes a problem if you choose only to act after crossing a certain threshold of badness. That's where region beta is. So if things are good in your life, great, no problem. If things are bad in your life, great, activation energy to do something about it. But if things are just about passable, that is complacency. And so it's clear that this issue is real in our society, and it brings up 2 questions. Number 1, where do we see it? And number 2, what do we do about it? Because you cannot attempt to solve a problem that you cannot first identify. And I might be a communications major, so I'm not really a big numbers guy, but just hang with me on some of these statistics where men have failed and have become complacent. 1 in every 5 men have left a marriage once or more in their lives. Survey results show that 20% of men admit to cheating on their partner while they're still married. 85% of children and teens with behavioral disorders come from a fatherless home. 70% of adolescent patients in drug and alcohol treatment centers originate from homes without fathers. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 1 in every 4 children grow up without a father in the home. I'll say that last one again. 1 in every 4 children grow up without a father in their home. I'll say that last one in a different way. 1 in every 4 children are failed by the men who are supposed to lead in their lives, because those men chose comfortability over responsibility and have failed to do well with the family in which they were trusted by God to lead. These statistics are not by chance. They are by choice. A choice made by thousands of men to comply with complacency. And so that brings up question number 2, what do we do about it? Well, the answer is simple, really. React. As men, we must become aware of the world around us and respond to it with love and with care and with initiative. We are to raise the standard of what it means to be a biblical man of God. And in order to do that, we must also understand what that looks like. And so for me, I look at Joseph. You guys know Joseph. Joseph like Joseph and Mary. Joseph was basically the guy who God told, hey, I'm going to give you this baby that is not yours. You're going to have to travel 90 miles with a donkey so that he can be delivered next to a bunch of farm animals. Oh, and by the way, good luck, because he happens to be the most important baby of all time. That's the Joseph that I look at. Because that Joseph lived a very simple life. He was a carpenter. He made good money. He had no reason to do anything greater. However, God called him to be more, and he answered. So that when God needed a father for Jesus, when Herod sent soldiers to murder him, when the family needed to flee the country, when they needed to make the long journey home, when the family needed a roof over their head and food on the table and sandals on their feet, Joseph answered the call. When Joseph looked down at baby Jesus and he looked into his eyes, he did not see a hint of his own eyes. And when he looked down at the face of baby Jesus, he did not see a hint of his own face like any other biological father would. However, that carpenter still led and showed the Lord of all creation how to hew down into lumber the very trees that he planted at the dawn of creation. Why? Because God called him to. And God is asking the same of men today. Proverbs 1:32 says that the simple are killed by their turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them. Can you imagine if Martin Luther King Jr. got to the podium that day and he was just like, I'll tell him about my dream on another day. If he stepped up on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and was like, nah, I'll wait until things get really bad to say something. Honestly, I think that would have done the people even more injustice. And so my goal here tonight is not to give the men in the room a step-by-step on what it looks like to live in biblical manhood. Nor is my goal to hand out a pamphlet on what it means to be a man of God, because I don't know if I could write that pamphlet. However, my goal here tonight is to simply sound the alarm, so that men in the room may understand where we have fallen short when it comes to being men of God, and women in the room may understand where that bar is for biblical manhood, so that we may be held accountable to it. And I want to end here tonight with a call away from this comfortable, complacent cowardliness. Because at the end of the day, there is no difference between being a hero and being a coward, because both are the same on the inside. The only difference is that when things stray away from God, one takes action while the other sits and waits in complacency. And so to the men in the room, I ask you tonight, which one are you going to be? Thank you. Yeah!
This time, I think our judges are dismissed to go deliberate. While they're doing that, can we have one more round of applause for all of our speakers? As I mentioned, they're like really good this year. I didn't lie about that. As the judges are leaving, we're going to pull up the Audience Choice Award QR code so everyone can pull out your phones. And can I have our contestants bring your chairs up to the front now? We need to get the microphones down.
I don't know about you, Chrisana, but I am personally very glad I didn't go up against these guys.
Oh no, I've said it every day. I'm so glad that I went last year. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I would have, I wouldn't have won. Who wants to receive? Great. Okay, and once you're done voting, Michelle will be over there. I will be over here. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you don't, I have questions, so I am prepared. But I would like to open the floor to the audience first. Anyone who has questions for our contestants. Anyone? Please, someone raise your hand. Thank you.
Wait, I'm giving you the mic.
Okay. Henry, what inspired you personally to give this talk?
That's a phenomenal question, Nicholas. I love Nicholas. I think it's been a culmination of a lot of things that have kind of led up to me wanting to write this topic. As you know, Nicholas, I co-lead a Bible study with a bunch of my friends, my best friends in the whole world. And it's called MOGS, which stands for Men of God. Yeah, that's right. Come on, make some noise for MOGS. Make some noise for MOGS. And it's been life-changing because those people are showing me what it means to be a man of God, and making that a prominent goal in my life that maybe it wasn't before. And so I think that all the discussions that I've had with them kind of have led me to just have a passion for this topic. And so when I was asked if I would do a speech, I was like, well, I want to do something I'm passionate about. And so that was the first thing that I thought of.
Wonderful question. Who next?
I have a question for, is for specifically for Henry or for anyone on the panel? I missed, is this for anyone on the panel or for Henry specifically? Anyone specific. Okay, I have a question for Jason. I wanted to make sure I wasn't skipping everyone. So Jason, how have you used your own method which you proposed to us in re-examining your own music taste, and was there something that happened that signaled to you that an examining of your music taste should happen?
That's a great question. So I didn't put this in my speech, but this summer I had kind of like a personal revival where all of a sudden I just felt myself getting a lot closer to God, doing Bible study more, and just actually feeling his presence for the first time in a long while. And during that time, something told me, a still small voice told me to check the music I was listening to. But I just dismissed it. I said, no, that's probably my brain, going off. But then I felt that strong impression again. So then I said, okay. I looked at some of the songs in my playlist, and the first thing I did that I felt called to do was to just read the lyrics, just read it top to bottom. And a song like The Weekend by SZA, I love that song a lot. But then I really read top to bottom, and I found out I was jamming to infidelity, bro. She really talking about cheating to the fullest, and I was just jamming because I didn't realize, because the melody and the beat was so good. So I think that was a wake up, And then in terms of how it affected me, I have a girlfriend, so it's not like I felt like cheating personally, right? But I just realized what you put in is what's going to come out, and I don't want to put that in myself. I want to be faithful, of course. So rather than listening to those lyrics and having it appear in any type of way, it's better to just cut it off completely and make sure that it doesn't influence you. So that's what I did.
I was jamming to infidelity is wild. That's wild. Next question.
Have you been able to find music that you still enjoy that kind of replaces with good lyrics?
That is a beautiful question. So this summer, I said, God, if you want me to take a drastic shift from the music I've been listening to, you're going to have to give me some alternatives, You're going to have to. And just like that, the next day, there's some Christian artists that he suggested to me that I started listening to, like Caleb Gordon, Madison Ryan Ward. That's not to say I've stopped listening to secular music altogether, but now I'm a lot more careful of some of the words that I listen to. So I read the lyrics first. If I hear a song and I'm like, oh, that's good, I have to be wait, let me actually see what it's saying. And then I go through the lyrics and I see that if it doesn't conflict with the way that I want to live, it's okay for me to listen to.
I can do it. heels, guys. I'm proud of this. Who has it? You.
Okay, so my question is for Henry.
Thanks, guys.
For starters, hi Henry.
Hi, Marissa.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good.
But so I was just wondering if there's anything that you wished you could have included in your presentation today, but like you couldn't because of like time and everything.
I think if you guys know me, I can like talk about something that I'm really passionate about for a long time. I get really fired up about it. And so originally I had like a few more examples of complacency that Dr. Underation was my speech coach. And so I kind of had a few more examples of like the region beta paradox thing. And I wanted to include those because I thought they were good details, but I ended up kind of just like over explaining what that was. And it kind of made my speech a little too long. And so I cut that out. I don't think it would have made my speech better, but I just like talking. So I would have liked to explain that other example, I guess.
So it's Underation's fault.
Yeah, we can blame the professor.
I have a question for Abby. Abby, what would you... Hi, Abby. What would you say to someone who says, I'm not sure what I believe about God, or I'm not sure if I believe in God? How should I engage with chapel if I'm in that space?
Porter, what a good question. I think that in the research that I've done and the experiences that I've had, I'm realizing that chapel has the potential to be this space for people who don't know what they think about God or don't know what they believe about God to actually start wrestling that out. And I know that we have all, if you're here, you have at some point in time had to do some wrestling about who God is and what God is to you. And chapel can be a space for that if as a community we're willing to come together and make it a space for that. And so if you're someone who feels like, well, I don't know if I'm like that Christian. I don't know if I'm like that excited about God, and so I have to go to this space. I would encourage you to start using it as a time to start asking those questions. Because God does not just leave us in those spaces and is big enough to handle those questions. And I think that chapel can be the space for us to do that.
Oh my gosh. Can I like work my way down? I'm like,
Poor John.
I have a question for Yein about home. So, this morning, Bob talked about briefly how in 4 years, Gordon will be completely new college because all the student will leave and will be filled with completely new students. And you said home is where your heart is. So do you think your heart will still be in Gordon when all the students are changed and no one remains? Like, what do you think? Like, how would you deal with situations like that, where the place once you loved is not anymore filled with the people that you loved?
Okay, so my heart is honestly not in a specific place right now. It's not in Korea, not in Gordon, not in anywhere, but my heart is at God, like in God. So I don't think that was my point, actually. God has my heart, and that's my home. And I agree that, my time in China was wonderful in some points, and I really, my time with the Koreans in the school, they are my family as well. They are good times, and they remain as part of my home. And yeah, if that answered your question.
Hi. Is this okay? Cool. My question is also for you, Yein. I was wondering how your new understanding of what home is going to change how you interact with people, whether that be at Gordon or beyond. You don't have to give like a direct answer. You can just give like a prediction of what you think is going to happen.
So when I was really young, I never thought that home would change, because what I had as a kid of image of home is like a physical house. And then I first realized that home can change when I moved from one city to another city. And I realized that home is actually changing. And then I realized that more and more by living in different countries. And I also realized that people change in a good way or also in a bad way sometimes. And I know that throughout those changes, there's nothing can prevent it. There's no way it can prevent people changing or places changing or time changing. The only one who can prevent it is God. And that's why I kind of put my trust in him and I rely on him a bit more because he is the one who is never changed and who loves every one of us here in the room all the times. Thank you.
I also have a question for Yein. Sorry, I got the mic first.
Up here. Oh, okay. Hi, Tegan.
Hello,
I can
hello.
see you.
My apologies. So, why do you believe people want to constrict the concept of home in a box? Does the concept of home vary in different cultures, specifically from the countries you stayed at?
I think, the concept of home is very different based on the culture, I guess. After I came to the US, I realized that people here, Americans, say I love you a lot to your family and your people, but I realized that actually Koreans don't really do that, you know? Some of the Koreans at the back, you guys will agree with this, but yeah. And I think homes, the meaning of home or the idea of home is very different based on the countries and the cultures, but there is value in every culture with the concept of home. So I value them all, and there is no perfect home that we can find among us, like a country or a place. But I feel like the only perfect home that we can find is eventually God. That's why He's my home.
I have a question for Sarah. What do you think is the biggest impediment to a healthy self-image for young adults today, and what do you think the role of the church should be in that?
It's a really good question because there's a lot of research actually coming out on this right now. We're kind of having a mindset shift in the public health world of thinking of this not as a niche issue that's experienced among young adults, but rather something that is going across the entire lifespan of the individual. So to answer your question, I want to first answer that it's not just young people. We're seeing people in their 40s and their 50s also experiencing body image issues, and it's becoming a larger public health threat. So to answer your next question of what is the impediment, we talk about diet culture a lot, naming morality to foods and to exercise. And, the nature of a digital age where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others on social media and to other digital mediums, these are the kind of things that research is showing are having influences in how individuals are perceiving themselves. And then the question of the role of the church. So it's a tricky one. I think about what I was saying there about what it means that Christ kept his scars post-resurrection, and how he kept what could have been perceived as an imperfection post-resurrection. I think the church could do a lot of work in highlighting the wonder of imperfections in individuals, as the church is sometimes perceived as a space where you have to be put together. The perfect Christian sometimes looks a certain way and acts a certain way, and is perceived a certain way. I think if we're opening up a space for conversations of what it means to show up at church just trying your best, and knowing that that's good enough, and that is loved too, and that's part of redemption too. So I hope that answers your question. I'd love to talk more about that.
I also have a question for Sarah.
Hi.
It actually changed based on your response to that. So as a comm arts major, you think a lot about, obviously, how we talk with other people and how that influences us. So I'm curious what you have to say about how we should be engaging in these conversations about changing bodies in a way that's actually beneficial rather than negative.
So I'm really glad you asked that question. I was actually really inspired by what Chrisanna and I were talking about before this presentation here today. She was talking about her presentation that she did at JUD Talks last year about, something as simple as the body bloating. When you eat like really salty food or really cheesy food, and you're just bloated afterwards. Changing the way that we talk about even that's a very temporary state, to not be like, ugh, I'm bloated, ugh, I did so bad, I ate this thing, it was terrible, now I'm gonna have to run tomorrow, to be like, yeah, I feel bloated. Oh, well, better not do that again. That hurts. So trying to change for a concept of naming morality to how we perceive our body changing and just experiencing daily biological functions to be more neutral, as opposed to labeling that as a good or bad thing. So then that changes throughout the lifespan, so that, if your body changes from going from an active job where you're working at Starbucks running around every day to sitting at a desk and you're just not moving as much, that's just part of life. And that's not a good or bad thing, that's just a biological response. I don't know if that answers your question.
I actually also have a question for Sarah. So I love how you say, like, if this isn't me, like, why should I care? It's because it's going to be somebody else in your life. And my question is kind of similar to hers of, like, if this is my mother, my sister, my roommate, my cousin, like, what is some practical ways that you can see us like engaging in support of that while also not making that our own sort of responsibility?
So step one, that from what my reading had indicated, is changing first how you talk about yourself. So we model the behaviors that we deem socially acceptable to the individuals around us. Like Jason was saying, the subconscious that we allow in is the subconscious that's going out. So how we are addressing our own bodies and our own reactions to how our body's changing is modeling what we deem normal to other individuals. So step one, I would say, is change the narrative of how you're talking about yourself before you can start changing how other people are talking about themselves. And so through that, you're able to model, hey, I noticed you said this about your body. Have you thought of it like this? And giving that space for a conversation. I also do want to caveat, though, that some of the topics that I mentioned are true mental health conditions that do need support beyond just what you are able to provide to your peers and your family. So I do want to note that if you are in a situation where you feel like your peer or your friend is in that kind of yucky, gray, unsafe space, that's when it's best to start reaching out to on-campus support systems for them. I think about talking to your RA or an RD about having those conversations of like, is my friend actually okay? Like, they might need a little extra support there. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, actually, I have a question for Yein, but before that, I just wanted to say I really resonated with your speech as someone who is also a third culture kid and has struggled with questions of home. But yeah, you mentioned kind of being in the Philippines and being surrounded by Koreans, but not really feeling Korean despite, being ethnically Korean. So how do you navigate that sense of like cultural imposter syndrome, and like what were some of the like adjustment processes like for you?
Okay, so thank you for the question. I think one of the biggest reasons why I felt like a stranger among the Koreans when I first went to the Philippines is because I spent a long period of time in China when I was a little baby, as you saw. And I went to kindergarten in China with all those Chinese. Like, I didn't have any single Korean friend. And then I think that kind of impacted me greatly because everyone acts in the same way. So I kind of like follow after how they think and act, because in China, that is normal. I wanted to be an ordinary student among so many Chinese. I didn't want to be a special Korean or whatever. And I know that like being a Korean in China was pretty challenging, honestly, and especially being a Christian. So I really tried my best to kind of like a Chinese and like be a really good student among the Chinese, so that they can consider me as a Chinese student when I didn't really realize I was doing it. So that's why it was really, really hard for me when I first went to the Philippines, seeing all those Koreans. I never like interacted with the Koreans a lot, and I never like talked to Koreans for so long time. So it was really awkward. That's why I think it was really hard for me, but I realized that, yeah, it's cultural difference. It's not about something right or wrong, but it's about difference. That's what I learned, yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I have a question for Henry.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
Good. Thank you for your speech. I have a question about, you were talking about complacency, and you named a lot of like astounding statistics in regards to fatherhood and households. But I wonder, what are examples of complacency that you see either in your own life or here at Gordon College that you might want to address for the general men in this room?
I think that's a very good question. And I think in terms of my life, where I've seen complacency is if I notice something that I struggle with that I'm not acting on. So it's like if I'm having a problem with like whatever it is, maybe like an attitude problem, and I'm not actively finding ways to address my attitude throughout the day, well, then that's me being complacent. And so instead of just letting me have certain negative habits in my life and then just being like, God, forgive me for this. Why can't you just help me out with this? I'm like, okay, I see this negative habit. God, help me to figure this out so that I can change. And so that's where I think I've seen it in my life.
Okay, I think that's the time that we have. If you liked what you heard today, I wasn't going to bring it up, but then Sarah brought it up. Previous JUD Talks are on the ComArts YouTube, and if you liked what you heard, there are some pretty phenomenal speeches at 56 minutes mark for the 2023 speech competition, if you want to listen to more. And with that, shameless self-promo is officially over. I think our judges are done deliberating. Yes? And so now we get to find out the moment you've all waited for. If we down, yes, she is. I think she's going to say words at y'all. Stand, and then we're going to say as they give the award. Okay. So you do third.
Hi. We just wanted to compliment all of the speakers. You were phenomenal. Yeah. It was an incredibly hard decision. If we could have awarded 5 first place, we would have. And I want you to know that you all did a really terrific job, and we just wish you all the best in your future. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you want to do third?
In third place,
Drum roll.
we have Jason Asonye.
In second place, we have Sarah McDonald.
Next up, the Audience Choice Award for the 2024 JUD Talk is Henry Lonstein.
And I guess y'all want to know who first place is. Yeah? Do you? I'm not like convinced. Yeah? Do y'all want to know? In first place, Abby Durkin. JUD Talks. So outside there are refreshments. We're gonna get some photos with our contestants. Please feel free to go get cookies and hang out, and then our contestants will come up and join you soon. If you liked what you heard, and you want to be a part of this next year, please audition next year. And we'd love to see you back next year with more amazing speeches. Thank you all, and thank you to our faculty. Yes, thank you.
Very quickly before we go, let's also give a round of applause to CTS for making this possible.
Yes. And another round of applause for our judges and our contestants.